Scientists gave people the exact same wine in two different bottles, one labeled $5, one labeled $45. Brain scans showed the expensive wine literally activated more pleasure centers in the brain. Same wine, different price, different experience. Your brain doesn't just think expensive things are better. It actually experiences them as better. And luxury brands have spent billions learning how to exploit this quirk of human psychology. There's a Hermes bag called the Birkin that costs $10,000 to $500,000. It's made of leather, just like bags that cost $100. It holds your stuff, just like bags that cost $30. But people wait years on lists to buy one. They treat them like investments. They display them like art. Celebrities pose with them. And the mere sight of a Birkin triggers pleasure responses in the brains of luxury consumers. This isn't rational. A $200,000 handbag isn't 2,000 times better than a $100 bag by any objective measure. But luxury doesn't operate on objective measures. It operates on psychology, emotion, and identity. And the mechanisms that make expensive things feel better are hardwired into human neurology, social dynamics, and the stories we tell ourselves about who we are. This is the story of luxury psychology, the science behind why expensive feels better, and how brands engineer products and experiences to hack your brain's reward systems. From the neuroscience of price perception to the sociology of status signaling to the behavioral economics of irrational spending, luxury is a masterclass in applied psychology. And understanding how it works reveals uncomfortable truths about human nature, consumer culture, and the meanings we attach to objects. Because luxury isn't really about the products. It's about your brain, your insecurities, your aspirations, and your desperate need to signal your place in the social hierarchy. And luxury brands are very, very good at giving you exactly what your brain is wired to crave. Let's start with the neuroscience. In 2008, researchers at Stanford and Caltech conducted an experiment that fundamentally changed our understanding of how the brain processes value and pleasure. They gave test subjects wine to taste while scanning their brains with fMRI machines. The subjects were told the price of each wine before tasting. Some wines were labeled as expensive, $45, others as cheap, $5. What the subjects didn't know was that some of the expensive and cheap wines were actually the same wine in different bottles. The results were shocking. When subjects believed they were drinking expensive wine, the medial orbitofrontal cortex, the brain region associated with pleasure, showed significantly more activity than when they believed they were drinking cheap wine, even when it was literally the same wine. The subjects didn't just say they liked the expensive wine better. Their brains actually experienced more pleasure from it. Price information changed the subjective experience at a neurological level. This is called the price placebo effect, and it's one of the most important findings in consumer neuroscience. The implications are profound. Your brain doesn't experience products objectively. It experiences them through the filter of expectations, context, and price signals. When you believe something is expensive and high quality, your brain literally creates a more pleasurable experience than if you believe it's cheap. The product itself is only part of what you're experiencing. The other part is your brain's interpretation of what the product means based on external cues. This isn't conscious or controllable. It happens automatically at a neurological level before conscious thought. Luxury brands intuitively understood this long before neuroscience proved it. That's why they obsess over presentation, packaging, retail environments, brand heritage, and pricing strategy. They're not just selling products. They're engineering the contextual cues that will trigger your brain's reward systems. Every detail is calculated to signal quality, exclusivity, and status, because those signals literally change how your brain experiences the product. Let's talk about what luxury actually is. In economic terms, luxury goods are Veblen goods, named after economist Thorstein Veblen. Normal goods follow the law of demand. As price increases, demand decreases. Veblen goods are the opposite. As price increases, demand increases. People want them more because they're expensive. The high price itself is part of the product's value proposition. A $50,000 watch is desirable partly because it costs $50,000. Lower the price to $500, and it becomes less desirable even if the product is identical. The expense is the point. Why? Because humans are social creatures obsessed with status. Throughout evolutionary history, status determined access to resources, mates, and survival. High-status individuals had more food, better protection, more reproductive opportunities. Low-status individuals struggled and often died. Our brains evolved powerful drives to seek status and powerful anxieties about losing it. These drives are as fundamental as hunger or fear. We can't turn them off. And in modern society, wealth is the primary status marker. Luxury goods are visible proof of wealth and therefore status. This is called conspicuous consumption, another concept from Veblen. We don't just buy things for utility, we buy them to signal status to others. A luxury watch tells other people you have $50,000 to spend on a watch. That signals high status. The watch's function, telling time, is irrelevant. Any $20 watch tells time just as accurately. You're buying the signal, not the function. And because everyone knows luxury goods are expensive, wearing one is an unmistakable status signal. This is why luxury goods must be recognizable. The value isn't just in owning it, but in others knowing you own it. But conspicuous consumption is socially risky. If you signal too overtly, you seem insecure and trying too hard. There's a delicate balance between signaling status and maintaining taste and restraint. This is where luxury sophistication comes in. The most expensive luxury goods often have subtle branding. A Hermes belt has a small, understated buckle. A Loro Piana sweater has almost no visible logo. These brands signal status to people who know but fly under the radar of those who don't. This is called inconspicuous consumption, or quiet luxury, and it's the ultimate status signal. You're so wealthy and secure that you don't need loud logos. Your status is evident to peers while invisible to outsiders. This signals not just wealth but sophistication, taste, and belonging to an elite in-group. The hierarchy of luxury branding reveals this. Entry-level luxury, brands like Coach or Michael Kors, has prominent logos everywhere. People buying entry-level luxury are often newly affluent and want to signal their elevation from lower economic classes. Mid-tier luxury, brands like Gucci or Louis Vuitton, has visible branding but with more sophistication. People buying this are established middle class or affluent and want to signal success. Ultra-high-end luxury, brands like Hermes, Brunello Cucinelli, or Loro Piana, has minimal visible branding. People buying this are wealthy enough that they don't need to prove anything to outsiders. They're signaling to their own class. The progression from loud to quiet luxury parallels increasing wealth and social confidence. This creates a paradox. The most expensive goods often look the most understated. To outsiders, a $5,000 plain cashmere sweater looks like it could cost $100. But to insiders, the cut, the material quality, the fit, and the brand's reputation signal extreme expense. This is luxury as a secret handshake. If you know, you know. And if you don't know, you're not part of the club. This exclusivity is part of what makes it valuable. Luxury is about distinction and separation. You're distinguishing yourself from the masses and joining an exclusive group. The psychological reward is powerful because our brains are wired to seek in-group belonging and avoid out-group rejection. The scarcity principle amplifies this. Luxury brands deliberately limit supply to maintain exclusivity. Hermes famously produces far fewer Birkin bags than demand would justify. This creates waiting lists and scarcity, which increases desire. If anyone could walk into a store and buy a Birkin, it wouldn't be as coveted. The difficulty of acquisition becomes part of the product's value. You're not just buying a bag. You're buying membership in the exclusive club of people who were able to obtain this rare item. The scarcity triggers psychological scarcity bias, where we value rare things more highly than abundant things, even if they're functionally identical. Luxury brands also use heritage and storytelling to create emotional value. Rolex tells stories about explorers wearing their watches climbing Everest or diving to ocean depths. Hermes emphasizes their history as saddle makers to French aristocracy. Louis Vuitton highlights their tradition of making trunks for wealthy travelers. These stories create narrative value that transcends the physical product. You're not buying a watch. You're buying connection to a legacy of adventure and achievement. You're not buying a bag. You're buying a piece of aristocratic French history. The story triggers emotional responses and identity associations that make the product more meaningful. This is where luxury becomes about identity construction. In modern society, identity is partly expressed through consumption choices. What you wear, drive, and own says something about who you are, or who you want to be. Luxury goods are tools for identity performance. Buying a Rolex signals, I am successful and accomplished. Wearing Hermes signals, I am sophisticated and have arrived. Driving a Ferrari signals, I am bold and passionate. These identity signals are directed at others, but also at yourself. You're convincing yourself that you are the person who owns these things. The products become part of your self-concept. This is why people feel genuine emotional attachment to luxury goods, and why losing or damaging them creates disproportionate distress. It's not just property loss, it's identity damage. Luxury retailers understand all of this and design experiences to maximize psychological impact. Walk into a high-end boutique. The environment is carefully engineered. Expensive materials, dramatic lighting, spacious layouts, attentive staff, classical music. Everything signals exclusivity and wealth. This environment primes your brain to perceive the products as valuable and yourself as special for being there. The staff addresses you by name if they know it, creating intimacy and personalized service. They offer champagne or espresso, triggering reciprocity instincts where you feel obligated to purchase after receiving hospitality. They don't rush you, signaling that your time is valuable and they respect it. Every detail is psychological manipulation, but it works because it's appealing manipulation. You want to feel special and sophisticated. They're giving you that feeling. The actual purchase process is ritualized. The product is presented with ceremony, wrapped beautifully in branded packaging, placed in elegant bags with tissue paper and ribbons. This isn't just logistics, it's theater. The ritual creates a sense of occasion and importance. The unboxing experience extends the pleasure beyond the store. When you get home and unwrap your purchase, you relive the positive emotions. Luxury brands know this and invest heavily in packaging design. The box, bag, and wrapping are part of the product. They're signaling that what's inside is precious and deserving of this treatment. And experiencing that treatment makes your brain perceive the product as more valuable. There's also the phenomenon of luxury as investment and store of value. This is where psychology meets economics. Certain luxury goods, particularly from heritage brands like Hermes, Rolex, or Patek Philippe, appreciate in value over time. A Birkin bag bought for $10,000 might sell for $20,000 or more years later. A vintage Rolex bought for $5,000 might be worth $50,000 now. This creates a rational justification for irrational spending. I'm not spending money, I'm investing. The goods become alternative assets like gold or art. This psychological reframing removes guilt about extravagant purchases. You're not being frivolous, you're being financially savvy. Luxury brands cultivate this perception by emphasizing heritage, limited production, and secondary market values. The psychology of luxury also involves what behavioral economists call the sunk cost fallacy and commitment escalation. Once you buy one luxury item, you're psychologically committed to the category. You've identified as someone who buys luxury. This makes subsequent purchases easier to justify because they're consistent with your self-concept. If you bought a Rolex, buying Hermes feels like a natural extension of your taste and status, not a new deviation. This is why luxury consumers often stay within luxury across categories. They're not separately deciding to buy expensive clothes, watches, cars, and furniture. They've made one identity decision to be a luxury consumer, and individual purchases follow from that. There's also the endowment effect in luxury. Once you own a luxury item, your brain values it far more highly than identical items you don't own. Studies show people demand 2 to 3 times more money to sell something they own than they'd pay to buy it. This effect is magnified for luxury goods because of the identity association. Selling your Rolex isn't just a transaction, it's giving up part of your identity. This creates psychological lock-in, where luxury purchases become permanent parts of your life, rather than temporary consumption. The brands understand this and design products to become heirlooms passed down generations. "This was your grandfather's watch" adds immense emotional value that transcends monetary value. Luxury brands also exploit social proof and celebrity association. When celebrities wear or use luxury products, it creates aspiration. If I buy this, I'm like them. This is why brands give products to celebrities for free or pay them to use the products publicly. The exposure and association are worth far more than the cost of the product. Seeing Beyoncé with a Birkin makes other people want Birkins. Seeing Daniel Craig wear an Omega makes men want Omegas. The celebrity's status transfers to the product, and owning the product creates the fantasy that some of that status transfers to you. This is magical thinking, but it's powerful. Your brain wants to believe that owning the same watch as James Bond makes you a little bit like James Bond. The craftsmanship narrative is another psychological tool. Luxury brands emphasize handmade construction, rare materials, and artisan skill. Hermès shows you the craftsman who will spend 18 hours hand-stitching your bag. Patek Philippe emphasizes that their watches have hundreds of hand-finished components. This creates a narrative of intrinsic value. You're not just paying for status signaling. You're paying for craftsmanship and artistry. This provides moral justification for the expense. I'm supporting artisans. I'm preserving traditional skills. This reframing removes guilt and makes the purchase feel ethical rather than indulgent. The narrative is often accurate. Luxury goods often are better made, but the psychological function is separate from the material reality. Even if craftsmanship justifies a 10x price difference, luxury goods often cost 100x or 1000x more than mass market equivalents. The remaining 90x to 990x is pure psychology. There's also the concept of luxury as experience rather than possession. High-end travel, fine dining, exclusive events. These luxuries are ephemeral but trigger the same psychological mechanisms as physical goods. They signal status through expense and exclusivity. They create identity through experience. I'm someone who stays at the Ritz-Carlton and eats at Michelin-starred restaurants. They provide stories and memories that become part of your social currency. Telling friends about your stay at an overwater villa in the Maldives signals status and sophistication just as effectively as wearing a Rolex. Maybe more effectively because experiences seem less materialistic and more authentic than possessions. This is why luxury is increasingly shifting toward experiences. The psychology is similar, but experiences face less social criticism than conspicuous consumption of goods. The democratization of luxury creates interesting dynamics. As global wealth increases, more people can afford entry-level luxury. Brands respond by extending product lines downward with more affordable items. You can't afford a $10,000 Hermès bag, but you can buy a $500 scarf or $200 keychain. These accessible luxury items let more people participate in the brand and experience some of the psychological benefits. But this threatens exclusivity, which is core to luxury's appeal. If everyone has something from Hermès, it's no longer exclusive. Brands manage this by maintaining ultra-expensive products that remain inaccessible. The Birkin and Kelly bags stay exclusive while scarves and accessories democratize. This tiered structure lets the brand capture different market segments while preserving exclusivity at the top. But it creates tension because entry-level luxury consumers are often dismissed by ultra-high-net-worth individuals as aspirational rather than arrived. The in-group boundaries constantly shift upward to maintain distinction. There's also the phenomenon of luxury shame and justification. Despite the powerful drives toward luxury consumption, there's social pressure against excess and superficiality. Most cultures have values around modesty, frugality, and substance over style. Luxury consumption violates these values, creating cognitive dissonance. People who buy luxury often engage in elaborate justifications. The quality means it will last longer, so it's actually economical. I work hard and I deserve to treat myself. It's an investment that will hold value. These justifications are partly rational, but mostly emotional. They're resolving the tension between wanting luxury and believing you shouldn't be superficial or wasteful. The luxury industry supports these justifications by emphasizing quality, craftsmanship, and investment value. They're helping you feel okay about spending money on things you don't need by providing narratives that align with your values. The ultimate luxury psychology is when the product becomes secondary to the relationship with the brand. This is luxury fandom. Some people identify so strongly with a brand that they become collectors and evangelists. They own multiple items from the brand. They know the brand's history and designers. They participate in brand communities. They wait in line for limited releases. This is luxury as hobby and lifestyle, not just consumption. The brands cultivate this by creating exclusive events, limited editions, and insider knowledge. If you're a serious Hermès collector, you get access to special items and events not available to regular customers. This VIP treatment creates loyalty and further investment. You're not just buying products, you're maintaining your status within the brand's hierarchy. This is psychological lock-in at its finest. The brand has transformed you from a customer into a committed participant in their ecosystem. The pandemic revealed interesting truths about luxury psychology. During lockdowns, luxury sales initially crashed, then rebounded strongly. With nowhere to go and no one to see, conspicuous consumption lost its purpose. Why buy expensive clothes if nobody sees you? But luxury sales recovered as people redirected spending from experiences like travel to goods like handbags and watches. The psychology shifted from social signaling to self-signaling and investment. People bought luxury as comfort during stress, as rewards for surviving difficult times, as stores of value amid economic uncertainty, and as preparation for post-pandemic social life. The underlying psychological needs, status, identity, belonging, pleasure, persisted even when circumstances changed. We're also seeing the rise of digital luxury, NFTs, and digital fashion, virtual goods in video games, skins and cosmetics that cost hundreds of dollars for digital items with no physical existence. This seems absurd. How can a digital image be luxury? But the psychology is identical to physical luxury. Scarcity. NFTs are unique or limited edition. Status signaling. In online communities, digital goods signal the same status as physical goods in real life. Identity construction. Your avatar's appearance is part of your online identity. Investment narrative. Some NFTs appreciate in value. The medium is different, but the psychological mechanisms are the same. This proves that luxury isn't really about the objects. It's about what the objects represent psychologically and socially. Digital luxury is pure status signaling without physical utility, which makes the psychology more visible and undeniable. The luxury industry is worth over $350 billion annually and growing. This isn't just rich people being irrational. This is a sophisticated industry built on deep understanding of human psychology, neuroscience, and social dynamics. Every aspect of luxury, pricing, scarcity, branding, retail experience, storytelling, is calculated to trigger specific psychological responses. And it works because these responses are hardwired into human neurology and sociality. We can't not respond to status signals, scarcity, social proof, and identity associations. Even when we consciously know we're being manipulated, our brains still respond. The price placebo effect happens even when subjects know the wine prices are arbitrary. Knowing doesn't stop the brain from responding to cues. This creates an uncomfortable reality. Our experiences of value and pleasure are constructed, not objective. The same product feels different depending on context, price, presentation, and branding. This is true for luxury goods, but also for everything. Wine tastes better in fancy glasses. Food tastes better in upscale restaurants. Generic medicine works less well than brand name even when chemically identical. Our subjective experience is constantly shaped by external cues and internal expectations. We experience reality through psychological filters that we can't turn off. Luxury brands are master manipulators of these filters, but they're not creating new psychological mechanisms. They're exploiting existing ones that shape all human experience. So why does expensive feel better? Because your brain is wired to associate price with quality, scarcity with value, social status with pleasure, and identity with possessions. Luxury brands understand these mechanisms and engineer products, experiences, and narratives to maximize psychological impact. The physical products are often excellent, but the psychological products, status, identity, belonging, pleasure, are what you're really buying. And your brain responds to these psychological products with real neurological pleasure that's indistinguishable from pleasure derived from objectively better things. This doesn't mean luxury consumption is wrong or irrational. Humans are social creatures who need status, identity, and belonging. If luxury goods fulfill those needs, they're providing real value, even if it's psychological rather than material. The problem is when luxury consumption becomes compulsive, when it drives debt and financial stress, when it becomes the primary source of identity and self-worth, when it replaces genuine relationships and accomplishments. Luxury should be a supplement to a meaningful life, not a substitute for one. It's also worth questioning the values embedded in luxury culture. Do we really want a society organized around conspicuous consumption and status hierarchies, where your worth is determined by what you own, where exclusivity and scarcity are considered virtues rather than problems to solve? Luxury culture reinforces inequality by celebrating it and making it visible. It trains people to assess others based on possessions and to derive self-worth from consumption. These values are arguably toxic and corrosive to human flourishing and social cohesion. Yet they're so deeply embedded in consumer capitalism that imagining alternatives is difficult. There's also the environmental cost. Luxury goods often involve resource-intensive production, exotic materials, and global supply chains. The carbon footprint of a crocodile skin handbag sourced from Australia, tanned in Italy, and assembled in France before being flown to New York is substantial. Multiply that by millions of luxury goods produced annually, and the environmental impact is significant. Luxury brands are starting to address sustainability, but the tension between exclusivity and sustainability is real. Sustainable production often means higher volumes and lower costs, which threatens exclusivity. How do you make luxury democratic and sustainable without destroying what makes it luxury? The future of luxury will likely emphasize experiences over goods, authenticity over branding, and sustainability over excess. Younger consumers are less interested in loud logos and more interested in subtle quality. They value experiences like travel and dining over possessions. They care about environmental and social impact. This is forcing luxury brands to evolve. Some are embracing transparency about sourcing and production. Some are offering repair and refurbishment services to extend product life. Some are experimenting with resale and rental models. These changes are positive, but also raise questions about whether it's still luxury, if it's sustainable, accessible, and not wasteful. Can luxury exist without exclusivity and excess? Or are those elements definitional? What should individuals do with this knowledge? First, be aware of the psychological mechanisms at play. When you desire a luxury product, ask yourself what you're really seeking. Status, identity, pleasure, belonging. Can those needs be met in other ways? Often, yes. Genuine accomplishment provides more lasting satisfaction than status symbols. Real relationships provide more belonging than exclusive clubs. Creative pursuits provide more identity than branded possessions. This doesn't mean never buy luxury. It means buy consciously, understanding what you're really buying and whether it's worth the cost. Second, be skeptical of your own experiences. That expensive wine really does taste better to your brain, but that doesn't mean it objectively is better. Your brain is being influenced by price cues and expectations. Recognizing this doesn't eliminate the effect, but it might reduce the intensity. Blind taste tests, where you don't know prices or brands, provide more accurate assessments of quality. You might discover you prefer the cheaper option when branding is removed, or you might confirm that the expensive option really is better. Either way, you're making more informed choices. Third, resist compulsive luxury consumption. If you're buying luxury to fill emotional voids, address loneliness, or compensate for lack of accomplishment, the purchases won't satisfy you long-term. They'll provide temporary pleasure followed by emptiness, driving more purchases in a cycle that never resolves the underlying issues. Luxury should enhance an already fulfilling life, not be the source of fulfillment. If you find yourself unable to resist luxury purchases, experiencing distress when you can't buy luxury, or defining yourself primarily through possessions, those are signs of unhealthy relationship with consumption that might benefit from professional help. Fourth, consider alternative status signals: accomplishment, expertise, generosity, character, relationships. These provide status in certain social circles without requiring consumption. In many communities, being known as an expert, a helper, a good person provides more genuine respect than owning expensive things. These forms of status are sustainable, meaningful, and don't depend on continuous spending. They're also harder to fake, which makes them more reliable signals of actual value rather than just wealth. Fifth, enjoy luxury when you do consume it, but without attachment or identity dependence. If you buy a luxury item, appreciate the quality and craftsmanship. Enjoy the pleasure it brings, but hold it lightly. Don't let it define you. Don't hoard it anxiously. Don't feel devastated if it's lost or damaged. It's an object, not your identity. This detachment paradoxically allows more genuine enjoyment, because you're not burdened by anxiety about maintaining or losing the item. The psychology of luxury reveals something fundamental about human nature. We're social creatures whose brains are wired to seek status, build identity through external markers, and experience subjective reality through psychological filters we can't control. Luxury brands have built a massive industry by understanding and exploiting these hardwired traits. But understanding the mechanisms gives you power. You can't eliminate your psychological responses, but you can recognize them, question them, and sometimes resist them. You can make conscious choices about what you value and how you allocate resources. You can opt out of status games that don't serve you. You can build identity through accomplishment and character, rather than consumption. Expensive doesn't just feel better. It literally is better in your subjective experience because your brain makes it so. But subjective experience isn't the only measure of value. There's also objective quality, financial responsibility, environmental impact, and alignment with your values. Luxury offers genuine pleasures and benefits, but they come with costs: financial, psychological, social, and environmental. Whether those costs are worth the benefits is a question only you can answer. But answering it honestly requires understanding the psychology at play. Why does expensive feel better? Because 1 billion years of evolution wired your brain to seek status, and a century of capitalism learned to exploit that wiring for profit. Knowing this, you can decide whether to play the game and on what terms. The luxury brands will keep doing what they do. The question is whether you'll keep responding the way they expect, or whether you'll choose something different. Next time you're tempted by something expensive, ask yourself if you want the product or just what.